people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Our recap of Ryan versus Zapotoczna, scheduled for 10 rounds in the women's super flyweight division. When this fight was first announced, I anticipated that this would be a more difficult fight for Shannon than the originally scheduled Emma Dolan fight. Emma Dolan, who fell ill at the last minute, and Jasmina stood in her place. And as stated, it turned out to be a hard fight for Shannon Ryan. Good experience,
but she had to work for it.
In the early goings of the fight, you see Shannon Ryan's speed, her agility, her athleticism, and her power, her combinations. She was greatly flustering Jasmina, who was fencing with the jab, trying to manage the distance, set up the backhand, but couldn't contend with Shannon's speed, at least not early on. Shannon fighting out of a wide stance on her toes, doubling up on the jab upstairs, throwing single jabs to the body downstairs in order to bring the right hand around the side over the top. Landed several right hands throughout the course of the fight.
Showed a good variety of punches.
And I had her sweeping the first 4 rounds. The first 4 rounds went to Shannon Ryan. Now in round 5, things were a little bit more competitive. Jasmina starts getting in with good punches, good shots of her own.
It was her best round in the fight up until that point.
The 5th round. In the 6th round, the feverish pace that Shannon Ryan set early on finally started to catch up to her. She was breathing with her mouth open. She had noticeably slowed down, breathing heavy. That's the course.
Getting off to a fast start, you will notice that Shannon Ryan has a lot more musculature than Jasmina Zapotoczna, and big muscles eat up big oxygen.
Shannon isn't as long and limber as Jasmina. She's a shorter, stumpier fighter with a lot of musculature, and it's a trade-off. Activating all those muscles, engaging all those muscles makes Shannon Ryan an explosive fighter, but it takes its toll as a fight progresses. And Shannon Ryan, having never fought for 10 rounds before yesterday.
It's in round 5 that Jasmina starts to really find her way into this fight, and in round 6 where Shannon noticeably slows down, shows signs of fatigue.
Noticeably tired in the 6th round, though rallying back in the 7th. She had a big round in the 7th round, landed a lot of clean shots, a lot of big punches, though still noticeably tired.
Very competitive 8th round where both Shannon and Jasmina are trading punches mid-range to inside, which resulted in a clash of heads. A lot of blood.
There's a lot of blood all over the place. The fight was taking its toll on Shannon Ryan, though still valuable experience to be had in facing someone who can fight back, and that's what Jasmina was doing. She was fighting back. Last 3 rounds of the fight, round 8, round 9, round 10, very competitive, as Shannon had slowed down significantly, which opened the door for Jasmine to make things competitive, for Jasmina to start landing punches of her own. It was a thoroughly entertaining action fight where Shannon Ryan amassed an early lead, and she was well ahead, but you could see the difficulties that she was having, that she was fading down the stretch, having never fought in a 10-rounder before.
Jasmina was able to make it competitive because she's fluid mid-range to inside. She's got some speed of her own, and her gas tank held up.
Jasmina's a solid fighter, arguably the most solid fighter that Shannon Ryan has fought so far. And Shannon needs more experience, even more 10-rounders.
So that she can learn to pace herself. She got off to a fast start, though, because she's not a knockout merchant.
Right.
Because she's not a knockout puncher.
Right.
Getting off to a fast start.
You get off to a fast start, but you don't knock the other girl out early, it's going to catch up to you later on. So you might want to pace yourself in the early goings of a match while you're still fresh. Mitigate the expenditure of energy early on. Mitigate the exchanges, your output. Though no surprises here, Shannon won the fight the way I said she'd win the fight, for the reasons I said she'd win the fight. And as stated, I said she was going to look a little bit more human in this one. The Emma Dolan fight, stylistically, will be an easier fight than this fight was, because Emma Dolan's not as fluid mid-range to inside as Jasmina.
Jasmina's fluid mid-range to inside. She's got speed and combinations of her own, whereas at that same range, Emma Dolan, she might struggle because she's got very long arms. She needs more room to work, so if Shannon closes the distance on her, she'll be flustered.
She'll get beat to the punch. After the judges' scorecards were read, Shannon Ryan called out Emma Dolan. She said she still wants to fight her, and if they do that fight, I anticipate she'll look better in the Emma Dolan fight than she just did in the Zapotoczna fight. This fight was for a lesser version of a WBA title at Super Flyweight. The reigning WBA Super Flyweight champion, the full champion, is Argentina's own Clara Lescurat.
That's who Team Ryan are going after.
Clara doesn't have a lot of fights, so it won't be long before Shannon Ryan catches up to her. I'd give her 1 to 2 more fights before she's ready for that fight.
1 to 2 more, because if this weekend's fight showed us anything, it's that Shannon needs more rounds in the bank. As talented as she is, she still needs more experience and needs to become more accustomed to fighting in 10-rounders.
Pacing herself. Congratulations to her for advancing to a professional record of 7-0.
She's on her way.
In other news, Conor Benn has told reporters that the offer Eddie Hearn has made to Gervonta Davis to fight him next would see Tank make between 10 to 15 million. If 10 to 15 million ain't enough, then stay quiet, stay at your house with your little tag on your ankle.
Most will highlight that is substantially less than what Gervonta Davis made last year with Ryan Garcia.
However, there are not a lot of fights out there for Gervonta at this time that are equal to that fight in scale and commercial value. The Conor Benn fight, it is one of the bigger fights that he could hope to have with someone who actually brings some marquee value of their own to the table, because of Frank Martin, Rayo Valenzuela, or the winner of Romero versus Cruz.
If he fights any one of those guys, those fights ain't gonna sell but so much, and he'll be back to doing just north of or just under 200,000 pay-per-view buys. That's reality. That if Gervonta Davis wants to keep scoring big paydays, he's got to think outside the box and get off the island.
And I don't know if he's going to, given what the PBC is going through, their financial turmoil. We've been talking a lot about that here on the channel. If Gervonta Davis wants to get back out there and he wants to keep making big money, he may have to change his decorum. Veteran promoter Bob Arum was asked if Gervonta Davis versus Shakur Stevenson can happen.
Shakur wants to do that fight. Davis has to want to do that fight. He came off a big payday versus Ryan Garcia, and even though it's a much more difficult fight, Shakur doesn't give him that same payday.
What I've been telling you all along.
It is.
Shakur Stevenson compared to Ryan Garcia as a fight. That's less rewards for more risks, because stylistically, Shakur Stevenson doesn't do him any favors. In truth, stylistically, the Conor Benn fight, in spite of it being with a naturally bigger opponent, stylistically, that's actually a more favorable fight for Gervonta Davis than the Shakur Stevenson fight.
Styles make fights.
The long-range defensive style of Shakur Stevenson versus the come-forward aggressive style of Conor Benn. For a counter-puncher like Gervonta Davis, a shorter, stumpier guy that relies on the other man's aggression to punch him in between and catch him in between the shots. Even though Conor's bigger, he'd be better off fighting Conor Benn than fighting Shakur Stevenson.
The Conor Benn fight comes with an extra arm of revenue, a separate demographic, the British boxing fans who might be interested in seeing that fight.
More arms of revenue, more eyes on the fight, more money for the fighters. Irrespective of what you think of Conor Benn, how good he is or how good he isn't, he does come with some marquee value, and that's the name of the game. It is prize fighting, after all. Gervonta may stand to make a bigger prize fighting Conroy than fighting Shakur. Though ultimately, we don't know here and now that he'll end up fighting either of them. We don't know that he's going to change his decorum. We don't know that he's going to jump ship. We don't know that he's going to cross the street. It would be big news if he did, but that's what makes it hard to believe that after all these years...
Mayweather Promotions, Ellerby's campaign against Matchroom, against Eddie Hearn, against the DAZN platform, everything that's been said for the last 4 or 5 years.
If after all of that, Gervonta Davis ends up crossing over to that side of the street, that would be unexpected. That would be a strange twist of fate. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that that would be the end result. The usual suspects, the Haymanites, and some content creators who would be tasked with explaining if Al Heyman is the wizard that he's made out to be and the Amazon deal is as sweet as you guys say it is, then why would Gervonta Davis leave after what was the biggest fight of his career? If this deal is as sweet as apples, why would he now jump ship?
Would be the exact opposite of what they've been telling all their subscribers for all these years, and they would have a hell of a hard time spinning that.
But let's not put the cart before the horse. The reality of it is, Gervonta Davis hasn't crossed the street. We don't know that he's going to. And it's not uncommon for PBC fighters to turn down big money and big opportunities to stay on their side of things. I mean, isn't that what Rolly Romero just did? They offered him Ryan Garcia, and he decides he's going to stay on the PBC side, fight Isaac Cruz in a co-main event instead of fighting Ryan in a main event. These guys do business backwards.
As it pertains to Conor Benn, maybe he gets Gervonta Davis in the ring, maybe he doesn't. But if he doesn't, what should he do? Things aren't working out with Chris Eubank Jr. They may not work out with Gervonta Davis. What comes after that?
I think he should pursue a fight with WBA regular champion Eimantas Stanionis, who hasn't fought in a long while, so it's an opportunistic time to fight him. That could help get Conor Benn in position to fight for a full title at 147 pounds or be elevated to full champion status if he beats Eimantas Stanionis, an otherwise formidable fighter that hasn't seen action in, what's it been, over a year now?
It's been well over a year now. He last saw action on the undercard of Spence versus Ugas.
That was in 2022. We're in 2024. He lost a lot of time on what was supposed to be the Virgil Ortiz fight. We know why that didn't happen. And that was going to happen on the DAZN side of things. So if that fight was going to happen on the DAZN side of things, why can't the Conor Benn fight happen on the DAZN side of things? There's an opportunity there for Conor.
And there's an opportunity there for Stanionis. He needs one.
Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn are targeting all these big fights, these high-profile fights, and aren't having much luck.
They're not.
The Eubank fight isn't happening. The Davis fight might not happen. And if it doesn't, they should aim a little lower, at least for the time being. I think an Eimantas Stanionis fight is a realistic option for Conor Benn.
Not as expensive as a Eubank fight, not as expensive as a Davis fight, but you might actually get something out of it.
What's going on currently? You guys have any day?
No, we were supposed to be on the 30th, but Barrios was the only one really accept the fight.
Oh wow!
Well, he's right there too. That's why we would fight him, because he's right there for the WBC title.
Right.
He got the WBC inner on that.
Correct.
He beat Ugas, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so we wanted him, so we were supposed to fight him the 30th of March. But something about his girl having a baby, and he needed more time and all that. But you had more time back then to get it, you know what I mean? But now we got to probably wait till like in May or something to fight somebody on Canelo's card.
All right.
We probably be on that card.
By my count, that has to be something like the second postponement Jaron Boots Ennis has experienced within the last 12 months, because I vaguely recall late last year that he was rumored to be making an appearance on the undercard of Benavidez versus Andre, but that didn't happen, and now Bozy Ennis is saying that they were supposed to be coming back in March on the undercard of Zoo versus Thurman, but once again, that's not happening, and they're waiting.
All this for a Mario Barrios fight, as if fighting Mario Barrios and beating Mario Barrios is going to serve as the launch pad for Jaron Ennis' career. He can go in there. He can beat that guy. He can knock him out.
And it'll do about as much for Jaron Ennis' career as knocking out Thomas Dulorme did for his career, as knocking out Sergey Lipinets or Roman Villa. It's not going to make him a household name. It's not going to make him a star, and this fighter is already far too unpopular to have such a sparse schedule of activity. In the absence of big names and signature fights, the best thing that Boots can do is stay busy and stay active. And if you're still on the PBC side of things, that is, if you've decided to jump in bed with them now that Showtime is out of boxing and you're trying to fight under that banner,
Right.
moving forward, staying active and staying busy
Right.
could prove difficult. Now, I don't know what empty promises Al Heyman may have made them to jump into bed with him. I just know that Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, they're interested in signing Boots. They were. I'm pretty sure that they still are. And Eddie Hearn has the fight dates. He may not have the names, but what names does Al Heyman have? Mario Barrios? That's what passes for a big fight at welterweight now? If the most he has to offer you is Mario Barrios and several postponements and empty promises, maybe you should go somewhere else.
Let's say that Jaron Ennis is in bed with the PBC now.
Because it looks like he is. It sounds like he is. Every postponement Bozy Ennis, Jaron Ennis' father, described is in relation to a PBC show.
Yeah.
And every postponement that we've heard about has been in reference to a PBC show. That he was supposed to fight on Benavidez versus Andrade, but that didn't happen. Then he was supposed to fight on the undercard of Zoo versus Thurman. That doesn't look to be happening. They're hoping to get on Canelo Alvarez's next fight, Canelo Alvarez's next card, and that may not happen.
We talked about it in my previous video. Canelo Alvarez may be leaving the PBC. He may be fighting Jaime Munguia, and I don't get the sense that Canelo versus Munguia happens on the PBC side of things.
And if it doesn't, where does that leave Jaron Boots Ennis and his team, who are hoping they can get on that show? They're likely hoping they can get on that show because they know the PBC was supposed to be doing it, but what if they don't?
What then?
Just the other day, I saw veteran trainer Kevin Cunningham, who trains PBC fighters like Andre Durrell and Erickson Lubin, say, "I've been in the business of boxing almost 35 years. I've never seen so many young top-level fighters this frustrated. The days of pissing on fighters and trainers' heads and telling them it's raining is over." And you have to wonder what he's talking about. You have to wonder, what is he describing? Who's frustrated? The majority of fighters that he works with have affiliation to the PBC. So are PBC fighters the ones who are frustrated?
To what other fighters could he be referring to?
Thinking about that, the PBC's current situation, the lack of fight dates 2 months into the year of 2024, and noticing that Jaron Boots Ennis, he doesn't seem to have any news pending. They're still waiting, hoping that they can land a Mario Barrios fight.
Is it that the fighters and their teams are so focused on grafting in the gym, training and preparing for what could be a fight date, that they don't notice what's going on around them?
Do they not see? Do they not communicate with each other to get a whiff of what's going on? Did you jump into bed with Al Heyman and his PBC on the predication of what he did for Floyd Mayweather, or what he might have done for some other fighter, some other fighters? The situation now is not what it once was.
There is no Fox. There is no Showtime. Amazon didn't make a commitment to him.
Just seems to me like Team Ennis don't know how to read the room, read the writing on the wall, that whatever Al Heyman was doing before, he's working at a reduced capacity now. The situation has changed, and it's like it's going over their heads.
This guy's not popular enough yet to be so inactive. 2 fights a year?
He's not yet popular enough to be fighting on a schedule like that. 2 fights a year? He should be fighting 3 times a year, 4 if he can. He should be getting out there as often as he can, because there are no big names at welterweight. So the next best thing is keeping active and keeping busy with fighters like Radzov Butayev and Eimantas Stanionis, Igis Kavaliauskas.
Even Black Cobb.
It's what Gennady Golovkin did back in his heyday when he couldn't get the big names at middleweight. In the absence of a big name or a signature fight, he kept busy with whoever was willing to fight, whoever was there, and eventually it worked out for him.
Whereas these guys have far too much riding on a Mario Barrios fight, and in my humble opinion, far too much riding on Al Heyman's reputation, which is little more than empty promises.
You don't get back the time you're losing. Time is the one thing you don't get back, and you're pissing away an awful lot of time hoping they can work something out for you.
Should've went the Matchroom. Hell, even Top Rank.
So PBC don't have a stronghold at welterweight anymore.